Hi, I'm Crystal,
And I'm Neoshia.
and you're listening to the Rom-Com Detectives. Welcome to Rom-Com Detectives, episode 25, Mandatory Ice Cream. Today, Neoshia and I will be talking about the third episode of Castle Season 1, Hedge Fund Homeboys. This episode originally aired on March 23, 2009, and was written by David Gray and directed by Rob Bowman. So, before we get to the case briefing and the episode breakdown, I wanted to ask you why you thought, and we can revisit this later, but why do you think the title of this one is Hedge Fund Homeboys? Because I can't really,
Oh,
I don't really see the.
yeah, I actually do. So hedge fund homeboy. So hedge fund, implying that these are rich people, these are wealthy
Yeah, yeah,
people.
yeah.
And then homeboys, I think, being an allusion to the quote unquote gangster lifestyle. So I think the title comes from the fact that you have a group of rich kids who are cosplaying as gangsters.
Mm,
And as we get through the episode, or as we talk through it, right, we're going to learn some information,
yeah.
about them, selling drugs just for the fun of it, playing Russian
Oh,
roulette
okay.
just for the fun of it, right? So they're kind of like wannabe gangsters.
Uh huh. Okay. Okay.
And also, I think another important thing here is the victim, his family, as you're going to hear in just a moment. This would have been filmed in 2008. And this premiered in early 2009. So this is right at the time of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
And we have information about his parents and their work and the fact that they've had to recently downsize, and so I think that also points to the fact that the hedge fund part of this, right, like these are wealthy kids who are just kind of trying to pursue a lifestyle and fun that they're not really part of.
Yeah, so I guess the hedge fund part was what threw me off. I guess I kind of thought that if it was going to be like rich kids playing gangsters, it would be like trust fund homeboys. So that's I think what threw me off.
Hmm.
All right, let's get to the case briefing. The victim in this episode is Donny Kendall. He's only 18. He is found floating in a boat with a single gunshot wound to the chest.
And the motive was a girl, tale as old as time, right?
Yeah. So a lot of guest stars, most notably Jamie Chung. She played Romy. She's from Dexter, New Blood, Once Upon a Time, The Gifted, and Lovecraft Country. And Neoshia wrote down she was also in the real world. She was a contestant?
Yeah, so she was on The Real World. I mean, not one of the originals. I think this is probably
Oh,
towards the
okay.
end, right? So not when it's not when it was super popular still, but she was on The Real World, yeah.
Huh. Interesting. All right, and so there's also because these are mostly the kids. Nolan Gerard Funk. Can you imagine having that last name?
No, and I'm always so impressed with like the amount of research you do to like figure out where we've seen the guest stars before because there were two guest stars who I immediately picked out and I was like, Jamie Chung, that's Mulan from Once Upon a Time and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, but so this guy, Mr. Funk, played Brandon. He was the douchey kid.
Hmm.
He's been on Warehouse 13, Awkward, and Major Crimes. And then there's Michelle Page. She played Amanda, the other girl in that friend group, and she was actually I recognized her from The Mentalist. I thought she was a different girl on The Mentalist, but it turns out she was at because so this is Castle season 1 episode 3. She was on The Mentalist season 1 episode 3, so she got two shows, the first season, third episode.
And if I'm not mistaken, The Mentalist episode 3 of season 1 is a very similar storyline to this
Oh
particular
yeah, you're right.
episode.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a friend group. Yeah,
it's a friend
and
group, the girl dies or is
jealousy
murdered,
and
right. But
huh.
listen to our episode, of that for The Mentalist, episode, 3
Yeah,
of season 1, and I don't remember the title, but, I know we've done it.
but I did want to say I had to go look up how old she was because
Mhm.
this girl looks 30. She did not look like a teenager. But
Yeah,
she was
sorry.
like 22, so not too bad.
Which is funny because Jamie Chung is actually 25 in this
Oh,
episode. Yeah, and I mean,
she looked young. Yeah,
she does look pretty young, and, so Michelle Page, I actually immediately noticed her because she was in an episode of Bones, which I think would have been the same TV season year because it was season 4.
that's so
Or no,
funny.
season 3, it would have been the year before. Because like, she's very dramatic about, like they ask her, "Were you sleeping with the victim?" "Yes, he broke my heart." And she, like, rips out, I think, her nose ring or something because they asked for a DNA sample, and she, like
Oh my
no, sorry,
god.
she rips out her hair and gives her tears, like, it's very dramatic, and so that's what I remembered her from.
I don't remember that episode. Oh boy. Okay, and next there's Kunal Sharma. He played Spencer. He was on Hawaii Five-O and Prison Break. And then this guy's okay, so this guy's Steve Talley. He played the drug dealer Scoville.
Mhm,
He looks really familiar, but I actually couldn't find anything that I've actually seen him in. So I don't know. But he's been on Pretty Little Liars and The 100. And then lastly, we wrote down Drew Van Acker. He played Donny. So he wasn't in the episode very much. But he had a pretty impressive resume. He's been on Pretty Little Liars too for a lot of episodes. He was on Devious Maids and the Training Day TV show. So, but yeah,
mhm.
he had a pretty good career after his little stint being dead in a boat.
Yeah, I think his probably his biggest part of this episode, right, was the video that we'll get into in a
Oh
minute,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
there was the video.
That's true. He was in two videos actually because I was just watching that for the credits part. All right, let's get to the episode breakdown. So it opens with we were just talking about the boat. He's floating in the boat and he's dead. And then it goes right to Castle's apartment. And Alexis is reading a newspaper and he's teasing her about it because who reads a newspaper, right? Especially not kids. But Martha comes out really nicely dressed and says she has class because she's going to be going into life coach. So she's taking the class, not teaching the class, right?
Mhm. I think so.
She says she's going to be taking introduction to life coaching. She's always wanted to make a difference, and I love that. Okay, so she shows Castle business cards that she's made, and he's like, "But you list me as a client," which I guess she figures like do you think she'll say that she's his mother? Because I feel like if you put your son as like a client, then that's gonna like diminish that. But since they have different last names, do you
Mhm.
think maybe she'll just be like, "Oh yeah, this is Richard Castle, a best-selling novelist, and he's my client." Like she would probably leave off that that's her son, right?
I definitely think so. I think, it'll be like, "Oh, I have this connection to Richard Castle, through life coaching," but I don't think she'd mention that because only, like, a hardcore fan would put together that, like,
Yeah,
he changed his name, right?
yeah. It's so Martha for her to just she has no qualms about just using whatever resources she's got available. But so Alexis mentions, and all this stuff is just being set up for like the ending scene, but and like a scene in the middle. But basically, Alexis is going on a school trip to DC. And how far is DC from New York?
Let's about 4 hours, about 4
Uh,
hours,
so is
about
that like
by
a
train.
plane? Is that like a plane trip or what? Oh, it's train. Okay.
So train or plane, but it probably just save you a lot of time and hassle if you just take the train.
Uh, okay. But he can't chaperone because he says he has to stay home and make sure Martha behaves. And then his phone rings, and that's Beckett calling him about the body. And it's funny to note that like this takes place. It's supposed to be what Central Park,
Mhm.
but it's in LA. So because this show is filmed in LA, I didn't know this like for a good many seasons during my maybe my second watch. I was completely fooled into thinking it actually was in New York. But yeah, it amuses me that like every time now when I watch and I see them all in like thick coats and knitted caps, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
it must be really hot while they're filming in LA.
I mean, at least they do that, right? Because there are some shows where
Yeah.
they're like, "We are in New York," or "We are in, whatever, East Coast, Boston," or, whatever, and it's just like, "Where's your coat?" It's not warm here all year round like it is in LA.
So while they're at the scene, Beckett wonders why he was put in the boat because I think it's clear to them from the scene that the kid wasn't shot in the boat because I guess must be lack of blood. And then Castle makes a joke about Viking burials with maiden sacrifices. And then so they go to talk to the boy's family, and his mother says that he would spend after school with his friends. So she basically points him in the direction of his friend group. But the dad says that they've been friends like since they were kids. And Castle correctly guesses that they moved recently based on like the furniture in the house.
Mhm.
And so so I've seen this criticism of Castle on the subreddit before, but did the Kendalls just not seem to be that broken up about their son just being killed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something to be said about people processing grief differently, and maybe, like, when they're coming to do the notification, like, it still hasn't hit you yet, because grief kinda comes in waves.
Yeah.
Um, with that being said, I mean, yeah, and I don't know, there's this kind of, I think there's a critique I have about this episode overall, and I think this kind of touches on it or gets into it. I do think there is sort of this episode engages a lot of stereotypes about, like, rich people,
Yeah.
right? And one being that these rich parents are just so disconnected from their kid, right? Like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah.
he doesn't come home often. He's often with his friends."
He eats dinner with them too. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, they're just really disconnected, and so I feel like that also plays in here that, there's this disconnection between these parents and their kid because of, who they are and maybe what they're going through in terms of finances.
Yeah. Okay. Beckett asked Castle how he knew. So about the furniture, he says that the Chinese screen was too big for the apartment, so he thinks that they probably had to downsize recently. And so when they were in there with the parents, they did confirm, right, that he got laid off. He specifically said Lehman Brothers, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So is that what you're referring to?
In terms of the layoff and the
Yeah, yeah,
financial crisis, yes, yes, because this is around the time, in 2008 where I mean, it was a recession, right, where the financial industry crashed. So a lot of people lost their jobs, lost their homes, lost a lot of their possessions, and like these parents, sort of become unable to provide for the type of lifestyle that they had been providing for recently or previously. Sorry.
so Castle wonders how they could still afford the private school that he attends. And I like this part because it like adds like some backstory to Castle. She asks, "Or is he familiar with the school?" And he tells her that he's been kicked out of all of them, and that now that he's rich and famous, they all want to claim him. I like that part. So at the school, we find out right away like how he could still go to the school, and it's because he was one of their brightest students, and so they actually put him on scholarship so that he could still go to the school. And there's like a memorial for the kid in the hallway that they pass by, and then he takes them to the friend group, and so that's where we learn. Is there five of them
I think
left?
so. There's
Yeah.
two girls and 3 guys. 2 or 3, yeah, I think there are 5 of them.
Yeah, so they tell them that they hung out every day after school, but that everybody went home at around 5. And then they finally, well, Beckett like tells them something that she says that she went to York Prep, and they finally admit that the victim Donny was dealing drugs in the park. And I don't know, did they mention at this point that it was because his family was having a hard time? I don't know.
I don't remember that, but I think this was all part of a coordinated effort. These folks
Yeah,
got their stories together, right? And so, they kinda had layers and layers ready to go
yeah,
until you
yeah,
could finally pull back the truth. And then sort of my comment about this part of the episode, because when Beckett reveals, basically, "Hey, I'm one of you," which is, her trying to get the kids to talk to her, they ask her how she ends up a cop. And I think on one hand, this is another hint about Beckett's backstory. There's a bit of classicism going on here in terms of like, on one hand, it feels like they're almost trying to put her down for not reaching her true potential. Like, how could someone who went to York Prep be a cop?
yeah,
Like, what did you do wrong in life? It's essentially how, I don't know if you ever heard this when you were growing up, but like, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're going to end up flipping hamburgers for the rest of your life
yeah, yeah.
type thing.
While they're at the school, Beckett gets a call, and Castle leans. This. This was a good casket moment because he leans straight in. No sense of personal space, no like professionalism. He just leans right in to listen to her phone call. And like at first, like for a split second, you think, oh, she's putting her arm around him. Why? But it's so that she can reach around and grab his ear, which is so fitting with how she's been behaving around him. She's the mom, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, she is the adult in this relationship.
So they head to the park where the murder scene is. And then Castle's asking to see her school uniform pictures because she had told the kids that she went to York Prep. But she makes a snarky remark and tells him that she really wants to be on his poker game now because she was clearly lying and he couldn't tell. And she says that she only said that to make them comfortable and she went to public school. So Ryan walks him through the scene. He shows him a bench that he thinks that that Donnie got shot on, and there's like a whole pool of blood in the grass nearby. They have a 911 call from someone that came from really close by. I don't think that they can't triangulate 911 calls from like within yards, right? Call
I don't
BS on
think
that.
so. I don't think so. I mean, there is a lot of stuff like, right, that we see on a lot of these different rom-com shows or crime
Yeah,
shows where
they
the
stretch the
forensics. Yeah, yeah, like it's not stuff that you could do in real life, but it makes for a nice,
yeah,
addition to the
yeah.
drama, right?
Castle makes a note that the blood pool is huge, so that probably means that he was there for a while bleeding out. And he suggests that the killer then came to move him to the boat. And so, like, we talked about this in the last episode. Once again, this seems like a detail that Ryan and Beckett, as detectives, as seasoned New York City Police Department detectives, would know on their own. Like, they wouldn't need Castle to point that out to them.
Right, and I mean, like, that's the whole reason they're looking for this particular location, right? Because they figure it out early on that he was put on this boat after he was killed. Or, Beckett even asks, like,
Yeah, that's true.
why
Yeah.
is he on this boat? But I mean, I think part of this is that they kind of overplay how necessary Castle is to
His
solving the
contribution.
cases. Yeah, because it's not that he has no contribution. I don't think that's quite right either. But, he's not like what we see in The Mentalist with Patrick Jane or with
Mhm.
Temperance Brennan and Bones, where they do become integral to solving the cases. Here, and I think maybe this is sort of the growing pains of the show, and this is only episode 3 of season 1, right? So we're still figuring out who the players are, the writing especially is still figuring out who the characters are, what we need to show, what hooks the audience, what gets them in their seats. So I think that's important to keep in mind, but he's not really needed to solve these crimes.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be there because Beckett is his muse. It's about him shadowing her basically, right? To see, what she does and to write about his new character. Um but I also just kind of wanted to add here too that, I think this is part of a larger critique about these types of shows in this era because even when you have a show like Castle where it's the female part of the partnership who is in that role as police officer, they're the physical hero.
Mhm.
A physical hero may not be the right way to frame it, but they're not the consultant, right? They are the cop.
They're the muscle.
Um, it kind of feels like sometimes the shows go a little overboard in inserting their male partners in a way that gives them some of that physicality. So, like having the best example I could think of to compare this to was really Fringe, where, early on we established we have the female partner who is FBI, and then we have Peter, who's a consultant. And sometimes at like around season 2 or 3, we start to see Peter going into doors first before Olivia, or Peter firing guns. And it's kind of like, bro, what are you doing? You're not the FBI, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're
Like,
a
who gave you
partner.
a gun?
Right, right, right. And so I think that I don't know what it is that or the reason for this. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but I do think it is sort of a critique and we see it in The Mentalist sometimes too, where it is, the cop is the woman and the consultant is the man and then suddenly we have to do stuff to make the man look, more tough or more in the action than maybe he ought to be.
I feel like the medalist tried to help correct that in a way, though, by making Patrick Jane scared of guns, or to be like
Or just running away.
Adverse to guns, yeah, like he would always hide behind Lisbon, right? That was like a whole thing. Like, he had no shame in like being like, oh, I'm gonna go hide behind my really strong partner here.
Right.
So I feel like they at least tried to correct it in that, and like they just made it clear that he was like the brains to her brawn kind of thing. So, but yeah, I agree about Peter and Olivia.
I mean, I'm not this is not meant to be a hate comment or
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
criticism overall, but it's just something that I pick up on where it's like, you're watching, you're watching, you're watching, and then all of a sudden you kind of it hits you like, did he become a cop or FBI agent? Like, what's going on? Like, why is he going through the doors first? Why
yeah.
is
Like
he handling
these shows they had to really lose. Like I'm watching Magnum PI right now, and I'm just
Mhm.
like, these people are not cops, and they're just running around Hawaii shooting at anybody they like. And I'm like, oh my god, this show is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And like they do this with cops around him too.
with
They'll,
approval from the cops
yeah, I
even.
know. I'm just like, what? Why aren't they being arrested right now? uh anyway, we're getting off track. But I mean, they do this more than once in this episode of Castle, so we'll get to that once we get to that part. But so at the station, Esposito has the 911 caller, and this lady had just like a small little role, but she was really spunky, and I liked her because the way she just talks to Esposito, she's very sassy. She she gives a very New York vibe about her. But basically, he has her looking at photos of drug dealers, and she picks somebody out, and so they call him in, and Beckett is questioning him, and then Castle and Montgomery are watching, and so he's questioning why she's doing certain things, and he's telling her that, oh, she's actually trying to start building a case for the DA, and that she's asking him things in a certain way to get him to give more information that he than he would have. And I mentioned that because I want to mention something later on
Mhm.
when they're questioning one of the, I think, the
One of the
actual
friends.
the act they're questioning somebody, and I noticed this about Castle. But yeah, so we'll come back to that. But then so Beckett scares the drug dealer into spilling everything, and he tells him that he saw the whole friend group in the park that night, and they had told them that they went home at 5 o'clock, right? So that's lie number one. So they go back to the school and they're talking to them, and they admit that they were there, but that they were trying to stop Donnie, that he was out of control, with, I think, with his drug dealing.
Mhm.
And so they admit that they used to just go to the park and party, and that Donnie would provide the drugs. And they had shown a video earlier of Donnie like taking a video of himself inviting friends over for his with his dad's liquor and a party at his house or something because his parents were going to be out of town or something like that. So they tried establishing that he's like a naughty guy.
Yeah, and I think my interpretation of this was actually that I think they're trying to establish Donnie as a drug user.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
he's a quote unquote druggie and, he was just out of control and we couldn't control him and we couldn't
yeah.
stop him and yeah.
But yeah, their story shifts over time as they get busted
Mhm.
in each lie. So, but they say that after he got shot, they just ran away and they didn't call the police. So next it goes to Castle's apartment again. He's watching Alexis sleep, and she wakes up and he tells her that he used to watch her sleep when she used to go to bed at night. And then he's worried about her because he's been talking to these icky kids, and he asks her straight up, "Oh, do you do drugs?" And she like goes through this list of like signs of drugs that I guess she's read but he hasn't. As the whole parenting your parent thing has gone with him. But she says that she doesn't do any of those things so that indicates that she's clean. And then he questions who's going on this DC trip because I guess earlier she had mentioned that a chaperone was bowing out because they were going to rehab.
Mhm.
So I think that had it put it on his mind. Oh my god, maybe my daughter's
Well,
friends are.
yeah, I think it's just so common because you think that and I'm not a parent, so I can't just be like, "Oh, this is all parents are thinking," but it seems very common or very or at least palpable because you think that by, ensuring your child has a nice home, that you love them, that you make sure that they know that you'd always be there for them, that and provide good schools and all this stuff, that means your kids are going to be on the straight and narrow, right? Like you don't assume again stereotypes, right? We're engaging these stereotypes about the rich. You don't assume that this group of students are the ones who are out here in the park dealing drugs, taking drugs, being involved in any of the stuff that they're involved in.
She assures Castle that he doesn't need to worry about her because her friends would be there to bail her out. And so this sets off a light bulb in Castle's head. So the next day, he rushes into the squad room and goes to Beckett and he says, any of those kids, and I had picked up on this too. And he says that, well, why didn't any of the kids just give him the money? Because I'm pretty sure they said that the drug dealer had demanded $200. So when they first said that, I was just like, well, that's not that much money for rich kids, right? So
Oh.
that's the idea that Castle. He's like, why didn't any of them try to save their friend by just giving him the money? This is another thing that I feel like Beckett or Ryan or Esposito could have immediately picked up on their own. Like it makes them look like pretty crappy detectives. It's basic deduction, I thought.
Right.
Esposito argues that maybe they were just scared, and Castle suggested maybe why they did it. And so, I mean, other than that, though, I wanted to note that Ryan has another Castle book in his hands in this scene, and it's a blue one. So he's finished the red one, and he's reading another Castle book.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely becoming a fanboy in his own
Yeah,
right.
I love it. I love it. All right, so next, Beckett and Castle go to lockup where that drug dealer Skull is, and his skeevy lawyer is here. And I guess it's someone that Beckett has had like run-ins with before because they seem like they're pretty contentious with each other. They would like trade some remarks and things like that. But he, I guess, hadn't told them. Like, do you think that if you're like spilling something like this to try to get yourself out of trouble, you would just withhold additional information?
I mean, I don't
Because
know.
even
Like,
the lawyer is just like, no, this is not how you get yourself out of jail by withholding more details.
right. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to withhold it, but then on the flip side, I don't know that you want to be known as the drug dealer who ratted out
Yeah, true.
his street level dealers because then like people don't trust you.
Yeah, okay, that's true. But yeah, so he finally tells him that all the kids were stealing drugs for him, not just Donnie, but that he thinks it was only Donnie who did it for the money, and he feels like the other kids were just doing it for like thrills or whatever. So
Yeah, and I also just sort of had a comment on the lawyer's acting. I mean, he felt like he was doing an Andy Samberg impression to me and just not really a good lawyer. And I kind of wish we had the Yankman, that was his name, the Yankman and Beckett backstory here
I
because
know.
like
I wanted to know more. Like I was kind of hoping that, or I was kind of wondering if maybe that was like cut from the episode where like afterwards Castle asks her, "Oh, so what's with you and that guy?"
yeah, because I mean, like, I got the sense that he's probably a public defender, so that might be
No.
why she's run into him so many times, or she's run into him before. We don't know how many times, but that's what I got. But like, just the acting itself, it was like an Andy Samberg impression almost. And I'm just like, why is he acting this way? Is this like, because in the 2000s, we kind of had that whole like sarcasm,
Yeah,
wit
yeah.
thing going on. So I don't know if that's what it was, but like, that is, I was just thinking of Andy.
Young smarmy lawyer. A bit over the top.
Hmm.
So next we go to Montgomery's office. He's pissed because he already told his bosses that they caught the killer, and even the mayor called to thank him. And then he mentions as an aside to Castle that he's in for the next game. So I guess Castle's going to the basketball game with Montgomery and the mayor. Like wow,
Yeah, but they have good seats.
yeah. So he allows them to go talk to the kids again, but the drug dealer has to stay locked up. So they go to talk to Romy and Beckett. This is Jamie Chung. Beckett asks to look in her purse, and she notes, yeah, oh, she's got a Gucci bag, and she finds a whole clip of cash inside. So yeah, she could have definitely afforded to give the drug dealer $200. And so she just outright asks her, like, oh, why'd you just let your friend get shot? And that's when Romy reveals that they used to play something like Russian roulette, where they would just fire the gun at each other just for kicks, and that there wasn't supposed to be any bullets. But that I guess she refers to a time that Spencer bought bullets and they went out to Montauk and they shot cans, and I guess she's trying to establish how bullets came to be in there. So she's suggesting that they forgot to take them out or something like that.
And I mean, so the thing is, and I didn't look, I wasn't paying a lot of attention to the type of gun. If it's,
It's a revolver.
so yeah, that's the thing. You could have one stuck in the chamber.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But like, I thought this, to me, this scene was it was a little wild because I can't imagine, and I mean, maybe this is my own bias or stereotyping of rich people now, but I cannot believe her parents sat there
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
Beckett was like, I need to look in your purse.
I mean, she did say, "Is that okay?" And she tells her, "I could get a warrant," but at the same time, they just kind of roll over. They just right.
Yeah,
They
like, "Oh,
don't
just look in her purse." Like, "No, no worries." I would be like, "What are you looking for?" Like, what is, you know.
like. I am not rich by any means, but if this was my kid, I would be like, "No, this interview is over," or whatever. I would have put a stop to it. Just and I would have been like,
Right,
I'm gonna call a lawyer, even though I don't know if I can afford a lawyer. I would have just said that, just
right.
to like get it to end.
And I mean,
So
I do think, there's been a lot of conversation over the years in different spaces about shows like Law and Order. I've not really heard this specifically pertaining to Castle, but I don't know if you've heard like the propaganda conversations and how like crime dramas, so shows like Castle, and I mean, basically any of the ones we would talk about and that we're interested in, kind of contribute to the idea of, cops always being on the right side of things
yeah,
and,
yeah,
kind of convincing larger audiences that, everything cops do is for a reason. It's good. They never get things wrong. And if they do, then they're very sorry and they fix them. And so I also was kind of wondering about that too, because I think there is something to be said for a lot of people who, well, I didn't do anything wrong. So please by all means, take a look at my things. I'm innocent. And then they don't realize that by giving that permission,
yeah.
anything that is found and they're like, "Oh, this
Can be
goes to
used
show."
against you, just like
Exactly. Exactly. Like, they say it, right? But people, I think, have this idea of, who the police are, what the limitations are that the police face, how the system works, that they get in a lot of the shows isn't necessarily realistic, if that makes
and I feel like
sense.
particularly in New York, people would be skeptical of the NYPD.
Yeah,
So
like, I'm shocked that the moment, so I guess this is what shocks me. Is that these are well-resourced people, like, they're rich. They have a lawyer on retainer. Like, they have a lawyer. There's no way they don't have a lawyer or that they don't know a lawyer
even
that
if
they can
they're
call.
recently demoted rich, they probably still have one.
Right, right, and so, like, they have someone they can call to be like, "Hey, this cop just showed up here and wants to talk to our daughter, what do we do?" So that's, I mean, I think the part that shocks me, but again, I think it doesn't make for good drama, right? Like, it doesn't make for a good.
I don't think the episode would have worked at all just because of the crowd
Right,
that they're investigating. Yeah, so I think they had to be really loose with this. Otherwise, it's
right.
just there was not going to be an episode. Everybody would have just lawyered up, and then the case would be
Yeah, be dealing with all the
stonewalled.
lawyers, right?
Yep,
Like,
yep. Okay, so at the end of the conversation, Romy tells them that Max was the one who shot Donnie. I think she's saying that it was by accident, though. So
that's the impression I got, is, like, they
yeah,
didn't think there were any bullets, it was a complete accident, but Max was the one who did it.
yeah. Okay, so next they go to arrest Max. His mom is there. She says he's not home. Becky tells her to go call him and tell him to come home, but then she gets a call while like the mom is supposed to like be calling. And then she gets notified that, the kid Max went to the park and killed himself. And so after that happens, we next go back to Castle and Alexis. Castle's sleeping and Alexis wakes him up. She says she needs to confess something. And I think some people don't like the overly cute Alexis stuff, but I like it. So I like this scene. she she is so worried about how like she didn't tell Castle something. She's got to get it off her chest, and she tells a story about how it was late one night and she had a hard time getting home, and she jumped the turnstile at the train station. I thought it was so cute that she assures him that the next day she swiped twice and then didn't ride the train. She's such a good girl, and I like that about her. So
Yeah, I guess I'm one of those people because I'm questioning, like, is this endearing or is it over the top? Because on one hand, yeah, I mean, she's confessing, like, "Okay, dad, I did do something wrong and I need you to know." And that's, I get that. I get that, right? Because it is technically illegal to jump the turnstile.
uh huh.
Well, I mean, it's illegal to do that, right? And it's one of those, it's a petty crime. It's a petty crime. And it's not something that's huge. Like, even if you get caught doing it, you're not going to prison for life, and so it's not that big of a deal. But like, what got me was sort of her demands for a punishment. Like, I have to be punished. You have to punish me. And it's like, this is so over the top. And, the way that you're asking to be punished, it just, I don't know. To me, it seems a little over the top asking to be punished for that. And it's not just Castle being like, "Oh, I don't care," kind of parenting. It's just that sometimes we all break the law, right? There are little ways in which every person in the United States breaks the law at some point. Like, for example, coming to a rolling stop at a stop sign, technically illegal.
Jaywalking.
Jaywalking is another one. It happens all the time in New York City. It happens everywhere, right? This stuff is technically illegal, but it's like small, petty stuff that most of us do whenever and for whatever reason, and sometimes you get caught and sometimes you get ticketed for it and you move on.
Well, plus like they feel it feels like they double dip in like the character pool for her because she's like this she's the parent to her man-child father, and yet she's also extremely sheltered and innocent in this way. And so while I find it cute, I think what you're saying is valid too. This scene is where we get our episode title from because he tells her punishment is mandatory ice cream for breakfast, which I would not say no to that.
I
I'll
might,
take
I might. I don't know if I could start my day off like that, but I guess it's not different than like a pastry for breakfast.
Yeah, especially if it's summertime.
Hmm.
But she does say that she's going to punish herself if he doesn't ground her. And so they end up winding with her grounded for a week, but it's going to be after her trip. So she still negotiates some some things to her favor. So Castle goes back to the station and she's doing the release paperwork for Scoville because the ballistics on Max's gun, is it a different gun? I don't know. The ballistics match the ones that were the bullet, I guess, that killed Donnie. So they've got the proof that Max is the one who killed Donnie, and then he killed himself. So it should be case closed. But she is kind of confused because she said she's normally better at reading people, and then Casa and Beckett have like I'm gonna just call it a like minds conversation because they tend to have these, and this is like one of the early ones. Because I think we said in the first episode they had one, but they had it separately, right?
Hmm.
Like because he was going home and she was at the station, and then did they have one last episode for the nanny? I don't know, but this becomes a recurring thing and they start casting doubt on Max's guilt. And so they go to see Lainey, and she mentions suspicious findings because he had a slight abrasion on his finger, like someone pushed his finger down on the finger. And I don't know, do you think that's something that would leave a mark?
I don't know. I mean, like, I guess it depends on how hard they pull, because like a revolver can be hard
Uh huh.
to like when you're holding. So I've shot a revolver, and it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
easy to just like pull it back. Like, you actually have to pull it back. Now, if you wanted to go all CSI on this, right? This is where CSI would be like, so did the gun cock, did it like cut the person's hand? Because that happens sometimes with revolvers. And they would be like, let's go do the DNA testing to see who actually pulled the trigger. That is something that like they would do. They'd be like, oh yeah, well
Yeah.
obviously there's DNA everywhere, and we can test it for anything, anywhere, anytime.
Beckett comes up with the theory that one of the kids wanted to kill Donnie, and so what better way to do that than to make Max do it for them? By accident. So the theory now is that Max did kill Donnie, but he didn't mean to, and somebody else meant to make him do it. Spencer gives an alibi. He says he was with Brandon at his father's club, and I didn't really understand this part because so they talked to Brandon, who says he that Max wanted to come clean. He confirms that they were at the club, but yeah, so Beckett doesn't believe them, and that's when he shows them a video. He mentions that I guess Donnie was it Donnie's dad? He works in IT, so he had set something up for all the friend groups so that whenever they took videos or pictures and stuff, it would get shared to some. They call it. Did they call it a Bluetooth server? I don't know.
They use the
It's like an early version of the cloud, right? So
basically because they were using the word sync, like their phone synced up, and I was kind of confused at first because the kind of phones they had, I don't recall those phones being able to do that.
yeah,
Maybe I'm wrong because I had
Tech,
one of
it's
those, but I
tech
can't
mumbo
remember.
jumbo.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's for the drama, right? It's supposed
Yeah.
to sound good.
So he says he kept the video, and then so they watch the video, and Castle flinches and he looks away when it happens, and so that I think is the parent in him. He doesn't like looking at it, and I think I would have probably reacted the same way because it's. I mean, Beckett is used to seeing this kind of stuff, right? And he's not. So, and actually, you could even argue that maybe that was like the first time he's seen something like that happen, right? Like a young kid.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think it's different probably to see the body,
Yeah,
right? Someone who's already dead versus seeing the moment that they die.
yeah, yeah. So, but in the car, Beckett asks him if he's okay, and he says he was just thinking about the parents and how they'd feel watching the video. So, do you think that they would actually show them the video? Like, I mean, I guess maybe if there's a trial, eventually they might see it presented as evidence, or
Yeah, I mean, I think they could if there's a trial and it's presented as evidence,
your
but
dog.
I know she just,
She's doing the whole Titanic thing.
I know. Paint me like one of your French girls. Yeah, that's
Sorry.
what she does. No, you're fine. And so I just think that, if there is a trial, possibly they would enter that video as evidence and maybe they'd see it.
Mm,
And then maybe too, like, if the parents ask, like, could we see it once the case is closed? I mean,
yeah,
maybe they would see it, but I don't know that the parents would ever
yeah.
see it, and I don't know that they would want to.
Beckett learns that Donny and Amanda were dating a month ago, so that brings them to like the jealousy angle, because I guess Donny dumped her or something. So they bring in Amanda, and they confront her and saying that she had the motive because maybe she was mad that she was dumped or something, and she says that he dumped her, but she says it was because she cheated on him with Brandon. So she's not really like hiding the fact that it was probably her fault. And so Castle asks her if Brandon told her to shoot the video. And so this is what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that like the interrogation stuff where like Montgomery is telling Castle about how Beckett is asking things, but Castle says Brandon told you to shoot the video, didn't he? And it was such a leading question, like he just laid it all out, and it's like I don't think you would typically say this to someone who feels cornered in a police station, because I feel like anyone who feels cornered is just gonna like the way he says it is just very, oh, this is a way to let you off the hook. This is what happened, isn't it? And he just gives very a specific scenario, and she's like, yeah, yeah, oh my god, that's what happened. It's like, yeah, I didn't like that. I felt like he didn't learn anything from earlier, and he was just doing the direct opposite. But it was there for
Yeah.
drama, so
Yeah, I mean, it's the drama, right? Like, because yeah, I get your point, right? Like, you would want to ask the open-ended question to let the person talk themselves into a deeper hole. Like, if it's
yeah,
them, they're going to talk themselves into a hole. But I mean, like, the thing with the leading questions is that is actually one of the more realistic things, like, where, you did X, Y, and Z, didn't you? People don't realize this, but police officers can lie to you in this setting. They can't give you written, they can't like make up documents or, I doubt they can make up deep fake videos either or anything like that, but they can actually lie to you. They can ask you leading questions. Like, it's not that they can't do that stuff. It's just not good practice because if you actually want to get information out of someone, you want to ask the question open. So, instead of, for example, saying Brandon told you to shoot the video, didn't I think to your point, Crystal, wouldn't the better question be who told you to shoot the video?
yeah, yeah. Instead of
Right.
just putting the name in her
Yeah.
mouth, kind of thing.
Or even did someone tell you to shoot the video? Why did you shoot the video? You could ask all three of those questions, in fact, right?
Yeah, and still
And
arrive at the same information, right? And yeah.
yeah.
So next they go to confront Brandon. He's very cocky. He makes a really icky comment at Beckett. He tells her that she's hot and calls her bluff, and then actually no, the icky comment comes later. Yeah, but he's still
No,
being
he
icky
says one
here.
here too. He says
Yeah,
one
yeah.
here.
It's to the point where Castle, when the kid walks away, he tells her, "I really hate that kid."
Yeah.
That's how I felt too. I was like, "Ugh, what a punk."
I mean, so I actually liked Beckett's reaction here because he's clearly trying to disarm her, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think this is probably the first time we get a glimpse into the fact that this kid's probably the mastermind. And if this were Criminal Minds, we'd be calling him a sociopath,
Mhm.
which they don't get into that here. But like he's trying to disarm her, right? And make her uncomfortable. And it's probably because, he's a teenager, right? Teenagers say crappy things all the time. But he's also used to dealing with teenage girls when he's saying these things. And
Yeah.
that would probably disarm a teenage girl, but not Beckett, right? And so she doesn't take the bait. She holds her ground. And I could understand why Castle is like, I really hate that kid because I think it is more and more apparent that he is a mastermind. He's kind of the one that's concocted this whole scenario. And also, here he's saying these icky things.
So next they go to the station and they're trying to figure out how to nail this kid because he had dared them, right? Basically to prove that he
Yeah, so I think Brandon, he makes a comment along the lines of like, essentially, people are going to believe what they see, right?
yeah, and
And we
there's the
have
video.
Right. We have video proof of this being an accident. You have to prove that this was something, basically he's trying to tell them that he's committed the perfect crime because he doesn't think they can prove it.
Yeah. So Ryan and Esposito come back from canvassing, and they couldn't find anyone who spotted the two boys in the park, and so that makes Beckett realize that if they were together, their phones would have synced, and there would be a record of that. So that's the evidence that she is lashing onto, and she looks at the phone, and they don't reveal what she found, but it's obvious that she found it.
Yeah, and I mean this was the part where I was like, what do they mean the phone synced up? But I think that's the server piece of this. But again, I don't remember this being a real capability. So this is probably one of those things for the drama slash to move the plot along.
Yeah. Plus, like she says, there would be a record in the phone that their phone synced, and I was just like, would there be? Because I was thinking back to how like my Dropbox account works, and I was just like, would mine say that? But I don't know.
Well, and I
Maybe it
mean,
does.
we have to think about like in 2009, 2008 when this was filmed and written, like we're still running on 2G and 3G. Like we're
Yeah,
not we're not like, big 4 or 5G. Not everyone has Wi-Fi. Like this is not a big, I don't know. Like it's not like even today I would have a hard time thinking like, oh, their phones would show a record of this. Like you might be able to find like, oh, they connected to this Wi-Fi server at this time or something, but I don't know. Like I said, it's probably for the drama, for the plot.
so since we're talking about like things that don't really make sense, so they bring Brandon, and he declines to have a lawyer, and I gotta protest to this part because I feel like as cocky as he is, these rich kids probably have it beaten into their brains from a young age that you never talk to the cops without a lawyer.
Mhm.
But they don't need they need him to not have a lawyer, I think, just so that he can spill his guts.
Right.
So this is where he makes the icky comment. Beckett asks if he'd like to just sign a confession. He says sure, and he confesses that he'd like dying to cop a feel under her cop blouse, which is a pretty lame teenager icky comment, but it's still icky.
Right. And again, like this probably works on the girls he's used to talking to, so teenagers, right? Like this would disarm a teenage girl for sure.
Yeah.
She's heard worse.
So here though it's interesting because Beckett basically lets Castle take things away here with their primary suspect, but he basically tells a whole story about how his Bluetooth, and he just connects it to his own story about how Beckett land. It's all just to like land things on how Beckett has this thing too. And after he tells the whole story about how he thinks that everything went down, because the kid Brandon reiterates that he has the video, you can't prove anything. So that's when Castle goes into all the things that he feels happened between the friends. And at the end, Brandon goes, exactly. And then Castle turns his act off right away, and Beckett taunts him because I guess they're taking it as this exactly as a confession. But I mean, is it really? It felt like a little weak here.
I mean,
Like, can any lawyer pick apart exactly and say that wasn't a confession?
this whole thing's problematic because yeah, it's not really a confession, but also you don't really need a confession to prosecute someone. Circumstantial evidence can get people convicted. So like the record of the call and all these different things, even if the kid never explicitly says I did it, here's how I did it, you could still use all this other stuff to convict him.
So you're basically saying that they were just doing it to toy with him.
That, and then also too, I think my issue with this scene was, again, this is for the drama, this is for the plot. Like, I don't watch these shows and be like, this is why it's all wrong. But like, because I'm obviously watching for other reasons. But I think with a lot of these shows, it's about the plot. Is this really admissible? Is it really a confession? Probably not, right? Like, this probably doesn't get admitted for a couple reasons. One of those being they ask this child, because my understanding is he's under 18,
He's a minor, right?
if he wants a lawyer or his parents to be called. And just because he declines, they still go ahead and they question him, right? That could be a problem, right? Or, what you're pointing out, which is like, did he really confess to anything here? It just seems like it's really weak. And I know we still have a little bit to cover in this episode, but I think it goes to my overall critique to the episode.
Yeah, because I feel like did they need to be teenagers for this? They could have been
They could have
college
been college
freshmen.
students. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you could have still like made it so that there was not so much stretching of reality here. So
Right.
yeah. So that is all over because they arrest him and everything. So the case is closed. Castle and Alexis get ready to leave for DC because he's actually going to chaperone. Martha comes to see them off at the door, very suspicious because she's just like practically shooing them out. And then the doorbell rings just as they're leaving because her classmates from her life coaching class are coming over for a party.
Mhm.
Very Martha. But this is exactly what Castle was afraid of, right?
Yeah, Martha loves to entertain. Let her entertain.
But she shoves him out the door and Alexis leads them away. So that's the end of the episode. That's the breakdown. But like overall, like I was not a fan of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, me neither, because I think my issue with it is, I don't feel like it's a very satisfying case resolution,
Yeah.
because the way they've set the, if you will, the murder board up for this one, it is very much like this kid Brandon, first off, is a sociopath. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
he set a chain of events into motion to kill this other kid because of a girl, right? Like, he was jealous that this guy had dated this girl and then they had broken up. And he sets this chain of emotion, has someone else do it, right? So this
Yeah.
is like clearly premeditated. He thinks through all this stuff, kills a second kid in the process to make him be the fall guy. And it just kind of like, none of that really comes, I don't get that through the resolution, like how serious it is in terms of what this crime was. And then also the other people involved in this, like, these 5 kids colluded to cover up the death of Donny, and then Max dies, right? So then the other 4 don't know about the Max thing. Like, they're not in that. But like, there's also this idea of this group of kids who are colluding, right? They're coming up with these lies, trying to cover. And I don't know, like, it just gets played off as, rich kids will be rich kids. But to me, like, there's no additional commentary or, ways of pointing out, like, that the fact that they were willing and able to do this was, first off, crazy pants, and second off, a problem.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of Nanny McDid, we had that conversation that Castle and Beckett had, and that kind of rounded it out kind of nicely, where like she talks about reality versus what he thinks. But there wasn't really anything like that in this one. So
Yeah, and, I didn't like it that much, but again, it's episode 3, right? And I thought, we did get some good hints about Beckett and her backstory, but it was just very much like case of the week type episode.
yeah, yeah, good establishment of Alexis and Martha too. So
Yeah, so I mean, I think if anything, right, I think that's the positive, is we're getting more character building. So learning more about, Castle and his past, and learning more about Beckett and her past, even though she kind of backs away and says, I was clearly lying about that in terms of where she went to school and things like that. We are starting to get more hints about the characters, the relationships, even with Alexis, whether or not you thought that was endearing or over the top. We are getting a sense of like who these people are.
all right, rewatches. I have one to suggest, and Beckett's hair is one because we've seen like she had like a pretty short haircut in the pilot, and
Mhm.
it's getting a little longer as time goes on. And eventually, we know that she ends up with a stunning mane of hair. So,
Yeah.
Let's take a look at her hair as we go by. I think right now it's like at about shoulder length.
Yeah, it's about shoulder length. It is highlighted with a lighter shade of brown than her natural color.
Yeah, it's kind of
Um,
spiky-ish too in certain times. So
yeah, and I mean, it's very much that, like, late 2000s look still, right? Like, it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
curled and flowy yet.
All right. So one thing is Brandon refers to kids in a Duke case. I think this is when he's talking about when he's about to show them the video of Donnie's murder. So I guess he was referring to a real case. It was a criminal case in 2006 from Durham, North Carolina, where three members of Duke University's men's lacrosse team were falsely accused of rape. So I guess that was something that they were referencing. And then this episode was originally supposed to air after Hell Hath No Fury, which is the next episode. So a couple of small things. Casket Corner, the ear twist. uh, what else did you zero in on?
So let's see, we've got the ear twist. Castle kind of getting upset over the kids, Brandon's misogynistic comments to Beckett, kind of showing some. Okay, on one hand, I just want to be clear about this. I think it is a baseline thing to, have decency and be like, that's not okay to say that kind of stuff. But on the other hand, already starting to show a bit of protectiveness with Beckett and
Yeah,
how people
yeah,
are talking to her. But then also Castle and Beckett arguing at the end there over whether or not she would have figured it out eventually. It's just good banner.
yeah. Also, I think that was like they were doing that to kind of like dig it in with the kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little showboating never hurt.
Yeah, yeah. Especially with a snotty little brat like that.
Mhm.
Okay, bestseller list. I didn't have too many favorite scenes, but I mean, I did like when Castle voices his frustration and says, "I hate that kid," because that's exactly how I felt. Because like when that kid walks off, I was like, "Oh, what a
Yeah, I mean, especially at that particular scene because, like, beforehand, you're like, "Okay, these kids are dumb." Like, they thought playing
yeah,
with a gun this way was a smart idea. But then after that particular interaction and it kinda hits you what's going on here, it's like, you know.
yeah." He's the mastermind.
Right. There was actually 2 scenes that I liked, and they both kind of involve smirking. So, first, when we talked about this a little bit ago, the first time that Beckett's interviewing the drug dealer, and Montgomery is, like, telling Castle, "Just watch her. Just watch what she does here." And the way Montgomery starts laughing when she gets that guy to ask for immunity, I love that. That was so funny because it's just like he knew what she was doing and how that was gonna end. And then the other smirk is when Castle is, sort of doing his thing and talking to Brandon. And, because again, like, I think it really is that Brandon doesn't see Beckett as his equal. And he's
Mhm.
probably used to getting by, but he probably talks to his female teachers this way for that matter. But then with Castle, like, it's a whole different demeanor. And so her little smirk when he's talking to that kid is great.
Okay, so favorite lines. I think mine is when Beckett's talking to I think it's Scoville. He says, "I want
Yes.
immunity," and because you were just talking about that, right?
Yeah, it's that scene.
he says, "I want immunity," and she says, "From what? The mumps?"
Yeah, and so my favorite here was Castle saying, actually having to prove things is really tedious.
That
Um,
goes back to what he said the last time too, right?
yeah, because it's like it actually is hard work having to find evidence to, charge someone with a crime. It's not a matter of just like, I know you did it, so you're getting arrested.
It's kind of funny too because we've just been talking for the last hour about how they have it really easy in this TV show
Yeah.
finding the killer. All right, when we come back from a quick break, we're going to have a new Beckett's interrogation quiz. Okay, we're back with a new Beckett's interrogation. We're going to have 5 questions of increasing difficulty, and then we're going to have a bonus question at the end. So you guys are going to have 5 seconds to come up with an answer.
All right, let's do it.
Question 1. How much money do the friends say Donnie owed the shooter?
$200.
Very good. Okay, question 2. What is the name of the school the kids go to?
Is it Reading?
Yeah, there you go. Reading Prep. What does tragedy mean literally in Greek?
Ooh, what does tragedy mean literally in Greek?
This is something that Castle says to Beckett.
Nope.
It means goat song.
Goat song. Okay.
All right, question 4. When Castle found lime shards embedded in his walls, what was Martha's party for?
Her class.
No, it was for Cinco de Mayo. He's talking about the last party that she had.
Oh.
Also, what does that even mean, lime shards? What is he talking about?
Well, somebody obviously used a blender and didn't put a lid on it, and so it splattered all over his wall. That's probably what happened.
Okay.
I can answer that question. Just fine.
Okay, question 5. What statue does Scoville say he was at when Donny got shot? I would not be able to get these questions, by the way.
Well, I mean, I know it's in Central Park, but I don't. Let's say Washington.
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice and what? That makes sense. He's a drug dealer.
Okay, bonus question. What clued Lainey into the staged suicide?
His blood alcohol content and the fact that he had a bruise on the trigger finger.
Yeah. All right, that was it. Any last thoughts?
No, like I said, I didn't. This one wasn't, I think, the most moving episode for me, but I think it does help us. And I think sometimes with case of the week type episodes, when I say that, I don't mean that in a derogatory way, because from my experiences with different shows, case of the week is sometimes where you learn the most about the characters, right? You don't always learn everything about them in the myth arc. So I don't say that to mean like, oh, it's just case of the week, but it's very case of the week in terms of I think what we get
Yeah.
here are some foundations about the characters and building out who they are ahead of, more myth arc drama to come.
All right, if you're enjoying Rom-Com Detectives, we hope you'll consider taking a minute to leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For our question of the week, you can leave us a comment on Spotify, YouTube, or Reddit and tell us how you handle a 9-year-old on a sugar rush. Do you pull them by the ear? Do you pinch them by the nose? Or what else has she done so far to him? Just those two things, right?
That's it so far. That's it so far.
So if you'd like to join additional conversations about Castle, you can visit the Castle subreddit at reddit.com/r/CastleTV. To contact me and Neoshia, you can email us at host@romcomdetectives.com. Follow us on Instagram, Threads, or Blue Sky at romcomdetectives, or leave us a voicemail or text message at 1-650-733-XOXO. This episode of Rom-Com Detectives was recorded on July 10th, 2025. Rom-Com Detectives Castle Unit is co-hosted by Crystal Watanabe and Neoshia Roemer and is produced by Pico's House. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you guys next time for our breakdown of episode 4, Hell Hath No Fury.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.